Hello, everyone. I'm Holly Poole. I'm a professional astrologer as well as a healthyologist. Welcome to my channel. If you are new here, thank you for tuning in and joining me. If you are returning, also to you, thank you for coming back and supporting the channel. For me to continue to do these, I need people to watch them. Otherwise, what's sort of the point? As you've heard me say in numerous other videos, there are two specific months of 2024 that are very strong. April is the first one, and I really think the other one will be October. There's many reasons for April. I know that the majority of you who watch other astrology channels have been hearing so much information about the upcoming solar eclipse. But do I think it's about the eclipse? Not entirely. I actually think it's more about Chiron, and I will explain that as I get closer to the ecliptic energy date that I will cover directly in this video. So let me share my screen here to just take a look at the opening vibrational day of April 1st. And one of the things I want us to draw our attention to is Mercury. This is Mercury. Mercury is the planet of communication. It's also the planet of wind, by the way, in astrometeorology. And, you hear lots of people saying, don't sign contracts, don't do this, don't do that. We cannot give up living because Mercury goes retrograde. However, it is extremely important to pay a lot of attention to detail. One of the things that I highly recommend my clients before Mercury starts to retrograde, so if you're watching this video before April 1st, back up all of your information. The days coming up to the Mercury retrograde, any information I do not want to lose, I automatically put it on a USB stick. To me, that is important. I then have it. One time I did not do that, and I lost my whole entire astrology classes. We learn. Now, Mercury, when it starts to retrograde, will be starting at 27 degrees Aries. Mercury will actually go all the way back. It's going to come all the way back to the middle part of Aries. So Mercury's already gone through some of these conversations. In March, the month we just came through, in March, Mercury already talked to each one of these planets as it moved its way through. Then it got to 27 degrees. Now it is going to retrograde. What does that actually mean? So let me give you a visual. Let's say that there are two cars stopped at a stoplight. The light turns green. This car moves forward very quickly. When you look back to this car, it is not moving as quickly, and so to the naked eye, it is appearing to go backwards. Is it going backwards? No, it is an optical illusion. So in the heavens, when a planet is retrograding, what has happened is it's become very close to Earth. And so from the Earth perspective, it is appearing to go backwards. It is then time for us to do things. Re-look, rethink. rethink, research, recheck, recreate, re-ask. That's why we talk about it gives us a timing of review. And when I'm working with students or I'm working with clients, I always say Mercury retrograde is an amazing time for doing any type of research. Let's say you want to build a new deck, or you want to buy a new car, or you want to, whatever you want to do, Mercury retrograde, check into it. What models would work for you? How many doors do you want? What is the gas mileage? Are you buying an electric vehicle? So it's a fantastic timing of that review. Can we sign contracts through there? Yes. Do I recommend it? No. And the reason I don't, again, let's do a visual. Let's say you're sitting at home and reviewing some contracts. Just you. We're not in a Mercury retrograde now. I'm going to use this as an example. You're just sitting here. You have clarity of thought. You have all of that. During a Mercury retrograde, it actually feels like we're in the middle of a mall, maybe sitting at the food court, trying to determine about this contract. So Mercury retrogrades, things can easily get missed. Can we stop the world because Mercury is retrograding? No, we can't stop the world. We still have to keep going. So often I say, if you have to sign something, ideally, it's a good idea to send it to somebody that is not have an emotional connection to the contract, and allow them to reread that contract. And that's your best way of dealing with signing things through a Mercury retrograde. So, should we be fearful? No. But should we be attentive and on point? Absolutely. The other thing starting and coming into April is that Jupiter here in the sky is sitting at 17 degrees Taurus, and Uranus, the planet of unexpected events, is sitting at 20 degrees Taurus. One of the things you've heard astrologers say is, oh, we're going to have the conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus. What does that actually mean anyway? Well, it means Uranus is at 20 degrees, Jupiter is at 17 degrees. Jupiter is actually going to move its way forward, and it's going to come to that 20-degree mark where exactly Uranus is. That's called a conjunction. So we'll talk about that as we are moving our way along. I'm also cautioning, not putting in fear, but I am cautioning clients to actually make sure they have a bit of cash in their home, because on the world stage, and remember, we've got so much chaotic energy going on. We'll have Mercury retrograde being chaotic. We'll have the solar eclipse going on, creating chaotic. So let's be prepared for it all. And having a bit of cash at home, because I would not be surprised if we're going to run into some banking issues, some banking problems. On the world stage, in mundane astrology, Taurus represents the banking industry. Jupiter, planet of expansion, running into Uranus, planet of unexpected events, may actually be a problem happening on the banking world. Maybe the banking industry will go down for a short period of time. The banking industry in Canada is very, very different than the banking industry within the US and other parts of the world. So they will bring it back up. But when this comes together, we're actually going to be in the middle of the Mercury retrograde, Communication is not going to be going well at the time. So trying to reignite and re-bring up that banking industry, or banking machines, ATM machines. Sometimes in a situation like that, we experience a blackout. So let's be proactive and have some cash within our home. I will get to the date, actually, that we will be seeing more and more of this as Jupiter moves its way forward. So as I said, I'm all about being proactive. The other thing we're going to see coming through April, you can see it's becoming very busy here. We're going to see Mars come up and line up with Saturn. Now, one of the things I guess that astrologers don't always answer, because maybe they don't think about it. If I didn't know anything about astrology, one of my questions would be, well, how does that work? Because Saturn's there, Mars is getting closer. Well, why doesn't Saturn move away from Mars? Because each one of those planets sitting directly within the chart move at a different speed. That's why. Compared to Saturn, Mars is very fast. Mars will make it around the whole zodiac every 2 years. Mars makes it all the way around there every 2 years. However, it takes Saturn 29 or 30 years to move all the way around. So that's why Mars can catch up with Saturn, because Mars is so much faster. But I often think, as I say, I often think astrologers use conversations. And if I didn't know anything about astrology, I'd be having some of those questions, such as that. All right. So that's sort of the 1st of April. I'm going to move the chart one day at a time. The moon, we're going to see what moves the fastest is actually going to be the moon. We're going to see the moon is going to make it all the way around the zodiac once a month, 28, 29 days. It makes it all the way around. So the fastest luminary, people call the moon a planet. It's a luminary. It illuminates. So the fastest on that chart right here is the moon. Boom, it's going to come around every 28, 29 days. Now, Pluto, this is Pluto right here. Pluto takes 265 years to make it all the way around the zodiac. So this is why everything within a chart is always in motion. It's always moving, but nothing is moving at the exact same pace. This is also why it will take 25,000, think about that, 25,000 years to have the planet exactly in the exact space that we have it right now. And that's also why I often say, cherish this moment in time. Cherish this exact moment. And I want everyone to stop your video here for a moment. And I want you to cherish this moment and put our hands on our heart and say, we chose, as an evolutionary astrologer, we chose to be here at this time, in this very exciting times. Now, am I naive enough to think that there's not horrible things going on in the world? Absolutely, I am. I realize that. But there's also very great, wonderful things going on in the world. And we are in such a time right now of transition that it's crazy. Everyone is watching this, everyone in the world is part of this whole transition that is happening. I 100% guarantee you that in generations to come, long after you and I have gone dust to dust, long after that, generations will look back to 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, those and even starting at 2020 in a lot of ways, how the new earth, the new world got pivotal at that particular point in time. And before coming to Earth, you chose it as part of your evolutionary journey. And I think one of the big things coming forward, and I will actually go because the next big time period really is I'm going to go directly to that solar eclipse. And there's the day of the solar eclipse, and you can see it down at the bottom of the screen. The software determines that it is a solar eclipse. There is the sun. So this is a new moon. We've got the sun and the moon. The sun at 19 degrees Aries. We've got Chiron at 19 degrees Aries. We've got the moon at 19 degrees Aries. Mercury retrograde is not that far, really, away from that particular alignment. And as most of you have heard me say so many times, are we going to see something massively, fantastically great on the day of April 8th? We're going to see a beautiful, wonderful solar eclipse if you live in the avenue of the totality. But do I expect any massive, great, fantastic event to take place then? On that particular day? Maybe not. But we as a collective society, will have a huge, huge, huge awakening. So let's look at the totality of where that is coming in, because I've had many questions on that. And you can see, and we've seen this all over the internet everywhere. It's coming, of course, down around the southwest, going up to the northeast. Now there's Nova Scotia, which is where I'm presently living, is in Nova Scotia. There is the province of Newfoundland, where I was born. And we look at the totality of this. I am sure that as a young kid, I must have gone through some solar eclipses. I do not remember them. However, I do remember an eclipse happening in 1988 or 1989, one of those 2 years. And I remember it because I was running a business center at the time. And I stood outside with that solar eclipse. And of course, with a solar eclipse in the daylight hours, everything goes black, everything goes dark. Did I know it was a solar eclipse? Of course, because I wasn't into astrology at that point in time, but certainly all over the radio and everything they were talking about, all about the solar eclipse. But I remember this overwhelming power of energy coming over me at that point in time. And I would have to say, right now we're in 2024. I would have to say, looking back on that particular time in my life, that had to be 2 of the most pivotal years I ever experienced. And those 2 years certainly made me be who I am today. It was 1989 that I started to study astrology. It was 1989 I got married. It was 1989 that I recognized perhaps I didn't 100% fit in the corporate world. Perhaps I had a much greater calling than that. And I think that this particular solar eclipse that we are all entering on the 8th of April is going to give that sense to all of us. Now, one of the things at the very beginning of this, I said, do I think it is just about the solar eclipse? No, I don't think it's just about the solar eclipse. I actually think one of the greatest partners connected with this solar eclipse is Chiron. And so I decided to actually do a little bit of research. Looking back, Chiron was known as the wounded warrior because he did get wounded. There's many aspects to that tale. But one of the tales is that a poison arrow went into his foot. Some other mythology says leg. Doesn't really matter. But he couldn't die because he was immortal. Did Chiron sit down and go, oh my God, life is horrible. I'm so sad. No, Chiron immediately recognized he was wounded. I'm going to find a way to fix that. I'm going to find a way to change that. And so he actually changed places with another centurion who was set to die in 2 years' time. They exchanged places. Who knows the mythology, how that can happen? But anyway, the mythological story is what is important. And so then Chiron realized he had 2 years left. So he went from that wounded warrior. He had been a very great, absolute, fantastic, amazing teacher previous to that. He had taught lots of the gods within the mythology. He said, I will become the greatest healer. So Chiron is about transformation. Chiron is about standing in our own power. Chiron is about transforming my life from the wounded warrior to the greatest healer, to service to humanity, to stepping into our greatness. So Chiron was discovered in 1977. And when you add that together, 1 plus 9 plus 7 plus 7, that all adds to the number 24. And 2 plus 4 equals 6. I was curious with that. I was very curious. On the year Chiron was discovered, what did it add to? It added to a 6. A 6 in numerology is about self-nurturing. The 6th house in the astrological chart is the house of health. And here was Chiron, had a health issue, being wounded, foot, leg, being wounded, being poisoned, a health issue that forced a turnaround. Did we not just come through that in 2020 with the virus, with the pandemic? Whether you believe it or you don't, it doesn't really matter. It forced changes. Chiron is saying to everyone, it is now time to sort of come out of that mindset. But let's go back to 1977 for a moment. So when Chiron was discovered in 1977, I ask each of you, take a moment, put your video on pause here for a moment. For those of you who's lived that long, what was going on in your life in 1977, 1978? Because it was in later part of the fall that Chiron got discovered. You know, Chiron orbit is it's a bridge between the inner and the outer planets. In the chakra system, Chiron is known as the third eye. Why? Because in 1977, we started to step a little bit away from the Christianity mindsets and went back into the intuitive self. People started pulling out their tarot cards. People started to do channeling work. 1977 was a big, huge opening of doors for the tarot and the channeling and the mysticism. So many mystics came out of the woodwork in 1977 when Chiron came on board. Why? Again, Chiron's the third eye, where the mystical. Chiron was an absolute amazing astrologer, the great teacher. He taught mysticism. He was a centurion. He taught mysticism. So here now is this solar eclipse with Chiron right there, center fold. I think that there is a huge awakening that is coming. I think there is a huge awakening. I've been saying this for a long time, but then I'm an Aquarian. I'm 5 years ahead of my time. Sometimes I'll talk about stuff 5 years ahead and wonder why people are not catching up. That's why. It's being an Aquarian. It's one of the shadow sides, I guess, of the Aquarian energy. And it's funny because I hear lots of Aquarians laughing out there. But it's happening in the sign of Aries. Aries is the first sign out of the zodiac. Aries is the first one ahead of the gate. Aries is on to something new. And yes, the key words for Aries is I am. If you know any Aries, that's some of their favorite words. I am. And I think it works for us here. Chiron said, I am wounded. What am I going to do about it? There is not one person on the earth plane that does not have wounding of any kind. Whether we've brought it forward from past lifetimes, whether we have had it in our growing up, but Chiron shows up in absolutely everybody's chart. I want you to look in your own personal chart. Where is this K with the 0 in your chart? Chiron is the woundedness. So when I do soul coaching work, we spend a fair amount of time talking about Chiron. And when people become 50, 51 years of age, they all experience a Chiron return. Chiron is somewhere within your chart. Everybody needs to know their Chiron. It is their wounded self. If Chiron in your chart might be in the sign of Taurus, there may be a wounding around self-worth. There may be a wounding around money. Am I afraid I'm going to run out of money? Am I afraid I'm going to, run out of money? If your Chiron is in Leo, am I afraid that I'm not lovable enough? Am I afraid that I don't deserve love? Leo also can represent children. Does it mean that I am wounded enough that my inner child is what's wounded? Chiron and Aquarius may be about the fact of, oh man, I'm different. I don't fit the norm. My Chiron's in Aquarius. I don't fit the norm. I don't fit in with society. Society says you can't do this. I'm so happy I learned that whole lesson a lot of years ago. What about Chiron in Aries? The woundedness about, can I actually really be a leader? Can I be that first one out of the gate? So when I work with clients, we work a lot on that Chiron because Chiron is like our Achilles heel. It often is what keeps us back in life. And it is so important to get a handle on that Chiron. And lots of you, I know, have had readings with me, and I've often said, I've learned many years ago to say if anyone's going down, it ain't going to be me. And that's getting a handle on your personal Chiron. We need to work with our Chiron. And here is Chiron right now at that solar eclipse. Yep, we didn't see, just using Vancouver, we didn't see Vancouver in the totality of that eclipse. Does that mean that Vancouver will not be feeling the energy of that eclipse? Absolutely not. That is not what it means. It just simply means they can't see it, physically see it. Can they and will they feel it? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time. We all will be feeling it. And you know, I'm fascinated with all of the lava flows that's coming in Iceland. And as I sit there transfixed, watching it, watching it, watching it, I am so sure that that's exactly this solar eclipse. Rooting things out from the bottom, pushing it up. You know, we cannot, throughout life, we cannot heal anything that is hidden. We cannot heal anything that is not acknowledged. Again, I come back to talk about Chiron and the woundedness. We all have wounds. If you do not acknowledge them, they cannot be healed. I don't care how much work, how much meditation, how much work you do. They have to be identified. They have to be acknowledged. They have to be seen as the wounding. And what's so very interesting with this Chiron in this solar eclipse, the solar eclipse is connected to the North Node. This is the North Node here, that feeling of that sense of purpose in life. And I'm going to tell you, if you were born in the year of 1968, this solar eclipse is highly going to be affecting your personal North Node, your personal reason for being here on Earth, your personal purpose for Earth. And I think these are going to ignite so much of that central part of our purpose. Let me also tell you, Chiron rules over crystals. Chiron rules over homeopathic medicine. Chiron rules over aromatherapy. Chiron rules over flower essences. Chiron rules over astrology. Chiron rules over tarot. Chiron rules over mysticism, divination, channeling. And with that solar eclipse, I'm going to tell you there is such an explosion of all of that that is coming on board. And you've chosen to be here for this. How many of you have a deck of angel cards? I ask that pretty much every reading I do. I say, do you have a deck of angel cards? Then the answer is yes. I say, good. You need to use them every day. Get in contact with your angels, with God, with the universe, with the spirit guides, with the guardian angels, whatever your personal belief system is. Chiron's opening that pathway. Chiron is saying, like, what are you waiting for? I'm pushing this through. And you know, when I think about society out there right now is a very disenchanted bunch. People who can tell you how everything is so wrong with the world. I can't tell you how anything is right, but they can tell you how everything is so wrong. We are in a society of great disenchantment. People are struggling for a leader. You know, they're struggling to find the correct leader. That's Pluto, because Pluto is digging down through all the corruption, digging down through, and that also, Pluto is also doing that whole lava flow. Bring it down so that it can arise and come up. The sign for Aries is red. It's the first fire sign. And on my website, I've actually connected the gemstone of ruby directly with Aries. So Chiron, you know, Chiron doesn't really move from that degree. As we see on the 8th, we got the sun, the moon at that degree, and then they're going to move on through, and the sun's going to move on through. Chiron's going, I'm not finished yet. I am not finished. I am not moving. I am staying here for pretty much the month of April. I've got some work to do. And I say to you as listeners, will you allow Chiron to do its work? Will you allow that to actually happen? On the lunar eclipse, I talked about what the Saros series number was. The Saros series of this particular eclipse is 139. And the Saros series of this eclipse actually it started on the 17th of May in 1501. Now, that is the exact same year that Michelangelo returns to his native Florence to begin work on his statue David. One of the things I've talked about, you know, Neptune is just about ready to come out of the sign of Pisces. Neptune actually went into the sign of Pisces in 2011. 2011, and then it kind of came back out, and then it went in 2012 for good. And I am pretty sure Neptune will stay in Pisces. It will come out of there for good in 2026. But I really believe that in that time, there is absolutely incredible artists that have been born from 2011, 2012 to 2026. So if you happen to have a child born in that time period, or teenagers and stuff now, but people who have this propensity and this calling to be hugely engaged in the work of art. That is huge. They really need to do that. Okay. I will move on because we have other things, but I am fascinated and I'm so happy you're along for the ride with me on this whole Chiron thing, because I think there is such a huge awakening. And sorry, I had a thought back there. Some days you almost think I got a bit of OCD or something, but I bounce around. My brain probably is faster than my mouth. I talked about a disenchanted society, and that's a bit sad on one level. But let me also say that it is only when we really become disenchanted with our life, with the government, with where we live, with what we do, with how things are ruled, with how we make our money, look at our money. You know, it's only when we become so disenchanted that we boot ourselves in the arse and get ourselves out of there. It's only times such as this that great progress can actually really be made. We've got to become so disenchanted to go, oh, for the love of God, I've got to get out of my own way. How many of you have said that? Have even sat on a couch all day, going to clean the house, and then after a while, it's like, I can't even stand me right now. So I have to get going and get everything moving. That's where we are as a society. We are that wounded warrior. Right now, we are that wounded warrior. But remember, Chiron did not ask for somebody else to fix it. Chiron went looking to find the answer himself. And that's where we all are. We cannot be looking to other people to fix it. It's really not their problem. It is our problem to do the fixing of our own woundedness. But first and foremost, we have to recognize what it is, where it is in our chart, what house is it in, what sign is it in. You know, right now, Chiron's in Aries. What sign is it in? And how does that create a woundedness for you? And how are you going to work your way through it? Let me move on. That was a little longer on the eclipse path than I was sort of expecting. The next big thing we see going on here, of course, is I'm watching Jupiter moving its way towards Uranus. And what we will see, of course, is the moon moving around. But you can see Chiron is not really moving from that 19 degrees. Now, we're going to see Mercury is backing up. Mercury is retrograding. Mercury is backing up. Mercury is coming into this ecliptic path. So one of the things, if you've been following me for a while, I often talk about, does things happen at the eclipse? Usually not. But I talk about an eclipse sets up a huge vibrational pathway. And as planets go through that pathway, then they also pick up that vibration. Well, here is Mercury coming back into that vibration. We're going to see Mercury go 21 degrees, 20 degrees, 19 degrees. And there it is at 21 degrees. We've got Jupiter getting closer and closer to Uranus here. There is Mercury right at 19 degrees. Now that's on the 15th of April. 15th of April. It's going to be an interesting day. On the world stage, you want to mark your calendar, because on the world stage, there will be huge, big announcements on how we're moving forward from here, how we're actually going to be doing things directly from here. Now, don't pay attention to it. Mercury is retrograding. When Mercury turns back around and comes back through that vibration, some of it might be correct, but most of it will look very differently. But the other piece that I'm looking at here, Mercury now has gone past that vibration. Mercury is now at 18 degrees. But on this day, so the 17th of April, on this particular day, we have Jupiter and Uranus both sitting at the same degree. If you in your chart have anything at, let's say, 19 degrees Taurus or up to 23 degrees Taurus, this is really going to be affecting you. I also can draw a line from this Jupiter and Uranus down to the asteroid goddess Ceres. Ceres is in Taurus. In astrology, that's called a trine. We like trines. This is actually, then I can draw a line over to Black Moon Lilith here at 21 degrees Virgo. So in reality, I can draw a line like this. We've got a grand trine. You know, one of the other things I think is going to happen here, I don't know about the US, but in Canada, we've been trying to bring the grocery giants to their knees in order to be able to bring down some of the food costs. Somewhere around this day, 17th, 18th, 19th, mark your calendars. 17, 18, 19, somebody gets some egg on their face. And it probably has to do with our food sources. This is all in the sign of Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. So this is all about earth, the earth products, but this is also about connecting with our food sources. This will be very interesting. As I said, mark your calendar, 17, 18, 19, and by now, remember, you want to make sure you've got some cash in your home, because Mercury is in the middle of that ecliptic energy. And this is also going to really do very wacky, wacky weather, let me tell you. But mark your calendar and realize that when people start to really step up to the plate, Ceres is about claiming what is rightfully mine. Black Moon Lilith is about shamefulness. Take note, that eclipse is still very much in focus. And that ecliptic energy is doing that huge transformation. So it's interesting times. And as I said, I really think this will also affect our banking industry. We move our way along, and you can see I'm still at the 18, 19 degrees. Now, on the 19th of April, the sun moves directly into Taurus. So we start to say happy birthday to our Taurus friends. Chiron has moved to 20 degrees, but then not very far from the 19. It's still in that very much ecliptic energy. And Jupiter and Uranus are still perfectly together. We still have Mercury retrograde. Mercury is actually not going to turn direct until the 25th is the day that Mercury will turn direct. And I will cover that in my next video because we're now going to come up to our next full moon. But you can see we still have Jupiter and Uranus together. And by now, Venus has come through that ecliptic energy. Venus came through. There's Venus at that 19 degrees. You can be sure Venus is going to be very highly vibrating. And for my friends who are, sensitives and sensitive to atmospheric pressure energy, just recognize that high polarization here of the planets like this are also going to, do things to atmospheric pressure. We will all be feeling this. As I said, I'm not telling you that for fearfulness, because that's not what I'm about. And by the time we then get to coming into the 22nd, 23rd, now we're going to come forward into our next full moon. Our next full moon is going to be the 23rd of April. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that it explained enough to you about why I feel that this is not just about the eclipse. As a matter of fact, the eclipse may be a bit of the driver, but I think the big driver with all of this is Chiron. Thank you very much for showing up. Give us a like just down there, a thumbs up. Lets us know that you enjoy seeing these videos, and I'll see you at the full moon. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the ecliptic energy. Allow that vibration and allow like your whole system to just drink it in. It's a great time to be alive. Take care.